If you are a fan of Steven Universe and or have a soft spot for Disney, cause why wouldn't you? You some kind of sociopath? Then you should consider buying our brand new hoodie/t-shirt on Teespring. Bam! Look at that design. It's so adorable. It's a mashup of Steven Universe and of course the famous log moment from The Lion King. These are only available until December 22nd, so be sure to pick one up just in time for the holidays, either for a friend, family member, or yourself, cause you should get yourself something nice every once in a while. You deserve it. You hear me? You deserve it. The art was done by my boy Michael Fortman, aka Sir Fluffy Fox, so be sure to check him out down below as well. He does awesome art. But yeah, buy this thing. It's a cool thing, and you'll be a cool person if you wear it, or whatever. Okay, enjoy insert video here. What is going on, everybody? This is Michael Williams from Cartoon Universe, and today I have a bit of an unorthodox theory for you guys. This is something that I didn't really buy into at first, but upon further evidence, it looks like it actually may be the case. At least it's pretty likely. It turns out that the present day events of Steven Universe don't actually take place around the current time period of the real world, but instead take place sometime in the 2020s after Kanye West has already been inevitably elected president. Yes, of course, this sounds insane. Not the Kanye thing, the future thing. Well, yeah, the Kanye thing too, but hey, you know. Anyway, this doesn't seem likely at first glance, but there's quite a bit of info backing this claim up. This was originally pointed out by Hexagon on the Cartoon Universe Discord, which you should totally be a part of. So big shout out to them. I'd like to expand upon the claims that were made in the Discord though. So yeah, Steven Universe actually takes place in the future. Probably. But how do we know this? What has been said or seen in the show that would lead anyone to this conclusion? Well, let's look at some evidence. In Gem Harvest, we learn that Greg left home with his van about 20 years ago. Remember the van because this is important. We also know that Greg went to some sort of tour in 2007 based on this sticker. Now this could mean a few things. Either he himself was the person on the tour, which would imply that 2007 was about the year that Greg was traveling with Marty, trying to get himself rich and famous. Or it could mean that he saw a concert in Beach City from a band or artist that was touring and grabbed the sticker as memorabilia of the concert. Or he could have been following a band or artist around during their tour, which is definitely the least likely of the three options. Well, let's look at another piece of evidence, and potentially the biggest piece of evidence for piecing this all together, which is Greg's van. Remember, according to Andy, Greg took off with his van around 2 decades ago. Well, in Onion Trade, we actually see the manual for Greg's car, and it reads 2000 to 2001. This is really interesting. If Greg left with his van 20 years ago, this means that the van is at least 20 years old. Now, of course, we don't actually know if Greg left with the same van 20 years ago, but from the audience perspective and from a writing standpoint, it's heavily implied, since we as the audience know Greg for his van, and there would have been no reason to mention that he specifically left with his van otherwise. And we know for sure that Greg had the same van at least since he was traveling with Marty. Now, while we don't know Greg's exact age, we do have confirmation on his approximate age. We know that in the home video in line 3, Greg is in his 30s, and thanks to confirmation from writer and storyboard artist Joe Johnston, we know that Greg is in his mid-40s currently. And it was stated in Steven's birthday that Greg met the Gems when he was 22, so that means in the flashback and story for Steven, Greg was 22. So it is heavily implied that Greg bought his van around 2000 to 2001. Now let's assume for a second that the tour that was mentioned on this sticker was his tour that he ended up quitting in Story for Steven. That took place in 2007. And apparently, though I cannot confirm this 2007 store definitively took place before Steven was born, according to some members of the Crewniverse. Now, we don't know how long Greg was touring exactly, or what exact year he left, but we do know that Greg was 22 at the time of meeting the Gems, so he could have been 22 when he left, he could have been 20, 21, 18, who knows. But assuming it was 2007 when he met the Gems after quitting his potential tour, and he was in his 30s during Lion 3 video, and he is currently in his mid-40s, then that means the current events would have to take place sometime in the 2020s. Now, what about the style and technology in Steven Universe? Well, Steven Universe has an interesting blend of modern and retro technology. There could be a couple of reasons for this. One, it is an alternate version of Earth, where the states and cities are based on real-life states and cities, but named and structured differently than their real-world counterparts. Hell, Russia doesn't even exist. So it's fair to reason that the overall world has a different pace when it comes to advancement of culture. As we can see, in the Greg flashbacks, it looks like the crystal gems are mostly in 80s, 90s style attire to kind of match up with human society, similar to how they were dressed in a more colonial style in this old picture. So it's possible that the fashion of the real world 80s and 90s was actually considered fashionable in the 2000s in the Steven Universe universe. Seems reasonable enough. But what about the technology? Well, we clearly have plenty of examples of present-day technology. Peridot is given a tablet with multiple modern apps, including not only more long-standing ones like Facebook and Twitter, but even newer ones like Tinder, Vine, and Neko Atsume. And we see that the humans of Earth are plenty capable of video chatting via software like Skype on their laptops. And clearly YouTube is a pretty well-established thing. Or TubeTube, whatever. What about Steven's television? It's a CRT. If you don't know what that means, it's an old retro clunky TV. And we see that he has seemed to have exclusively played Nintendo 64 and GameCube games. Now while it's totally possible that Steven just happens to have retro tastes in video games, I think it's also a possibility that the current technology of video games in this world is actually behind. My reasoning for this is because towards the beginning of the series, Steven has an N64 every time, but later upgrades to what is next in line for Nintendo home consoles, that being the GameCube. This is something that a lot of people did as children, me included. Once the new console came out, the old was put on the shelf for a little while, for the most part. I know once I got my GameCube, I didn't really touch my N64 again until I got a bit older. I think the difference is especially apparent with the television, seeing as to my memory, I don't believe there have been any instances of seeing HD televisions in the Steven Universe. Could be wrong. Even Onion has an old TV. And on top of that, in Joking Victim, Sadie feels the need to explain that a videotape is just like a DVD with a box. So DVDs do exist in this universe, and the fact that Sadie felt the need to explain what it was in the first place means that DVDs are probably relatively common at this point, but not quite enough to the point where everyone has one and not everyone has one in every room of the house. Not only did Onion have a CRT television and a videotape of his birth, but Sadie also has a CRT and a full-on collection of VHS tapes. So it looks like television, video games, and home video formats are all relative to the early mid-2000s in the real world, while the internet and other types of digital technology are parallel to today's time in the 2010s. Long story short, the technology and culture got somehow mixed up in this universe, where the cars, clothing, and entertainment all seem to draw from different eras in the real world. Put it all together, Steven Universe takes place in the 2020s, but with mixed up technology. But that pretty much covers it for this video. What did you guys think? Do you think this is accurate? Did I miss any important details? Let us know in the comments down below. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, and as always, big thank you to all of our patrons. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I've been Michael Williams, you've been watching Cartoon Universe, and we will see you in the next video. Peace.